Hey there, and welcome to the Reverie podcast. The following episode is with Dave Collingwood of Collingwood Cymbals. Dave and I go back over a year now being buddies, and me learning via his Patreon. Him and I get into some really cool cymbal-related topics in this episode and talk about what it means to be an artist and a lot of cool things that you can get even if you aren't an aspiring cymbalsmith. So without further ado, let's get to the episode. If you would, please hit the like button, please hit the subscribe button, and hit the bell if you want notifications on further episodes.
I think there's all these things which are quite interesting. I don't know about you, but if I sort of start stamping my feet about not liking my work, or I sort of go off the rails a little bit with what I'm doing, I'll think, I can go and do something else. And things like knife making, jewelry making, just all this stuff, all the skills we have.
Yeah, we're halfway there.
Cymbal makers. There's a lot. It's obviously very kind of practical stuff that we do.
Yeah, right.
But I saw a program about the kind of dying art, I suppose, of like Japanese sword making, and just the knowledge and the instinct that goes into that again, like heat the metal and hit it in certain ways and come up with this fine piece of work at the end is amazing, right? Really.
Yeah.
But I kind of struggle. I don't know what my point here is, but how much do you think as cymbal makers I was thinking about this earlier because you and I have been planning this conversation and not quite sure how to start or whatever. Obviously we've started now, but like the whole kind of myth and smoke and mirrors that goes on about cymbal making in particular. Are we kind of forging Japanese swords, or are we just smashing bits of metal?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And where do we exist in those sort of parameters?
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like the possibility exists for us to be forging Japanese swords because we see the fervor and the devotion that has surrounded itself around old Ks, just because they came from the 40s and 50s and 60s, there's a total fervor surrounding that. People they'll spend thousands of dollars for something that has cracks and is, just because it's old and because it has some of it is a little bit of bluster and like it has the name, so therefore it's but we don't necessarily pay. Me personally, I've only ever played a couple old Ks that I thought, this is really a amazing cymbal. A lot of them I play, I'm just kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
There is a character that old cymbals have that you just can't quite capture with a new cymbal. And it really only comes from the age. I think a lot of times there's a lot of makers that are trying to capture those old sounds. They're always going to fall short because that metal is not wasn't work hardened 50, 60 plus years ago, and it's just kind of is what it is. Ours will be that way in 50 or 60 years. Yeah.
I wonder though, if it'll be a different character, if kind of 20s, because we're, sounds weird to say, but we're in the 20s now.
Right.
If like 20s cymbals or have something really desirable, but kind of the desirability coming 50 years in the future rather than it being desirable now. Although it is, this is a very focused conversation we're having, but what's desirable about old Ks now is that kind of old part of the old K thing. Was it desirable at the time? Well, there's lots of nice old cymbals, but it just kind of reminds me that a lot of these jazz drummers that people are chasing in the cymbals they're looking for, very often just walked into studios and went, "What have you got? Fine, and I'll hit it and I'll make it work." And it wasn't. And again, I'm being really general about this. I'm generalizing, and I'm probably wrong in a lot because I don't know much about cymbals, and that's cool. I don't really want to, in a way. But they weren't kind of just like hanging them on the wall at weekends and staring at them for 48 hours until the next session and, falling in love with them. There's bits of this going on. But I kind of struggle with that whole kind of fetishism of gear in general and just stuff, And
it usually is somehow connected to not actually using it in musical situations. Like the guys will they'll have their collection of old Ks and they stay at their house in their studio, and maybe they're like in a case, like you said, or up on the wall, and like, or old drums, you know, it's like you wouldn't ever gig out with your old Slingerland kit. I've never been, I can't stand the idea of like collecting and just having something sit in like a glass display case. Like I want to use everything. So if I get my hands on an old K, like I want to take it to my gigs. I'll be careful with it, obviously, but I want to, I want to play it. You know, it's like, that's the point of these instruments, is to be used, you know, played, made music with.
At the same time though, it's, maybe I'm missing something. You know, I'm perfectly open to the fact that I might be wrong, and maybe collecting stuff's really actually quite nice, and I, you know, need to get over myself a little bit or something. But yeah, just as makers, I've one thing I realized, and before we started, I've just had a break. I had a week away in Greece, which was really, really amazing and very, very needed. But I've just been doing a lot of thinking, and I was doing some writing because I realized my business and my personal life have become very enmeshed, very much the same things. I love cymbals, I love music, I love creativity, but it's also my business. So I'm having to make the things and present them and sell them and do social media and all this kind of stuff that starts feeling a bit dirty. But one thing I realized was I don't actually know now what a good cymbal is, in a way. Or a good anything, I suppose. I guess it's just in the moment that when customers come here, for example, and sit down to the kit and try a cymbal, I'm looking at their face, and it's that first hit. I can see their eyes go, and you can guarantee they might spend 2 hours going through, but if their eyes went, on that first hit and their eyebrows went up, I know for a fact they're coming back to that cymbal and they're walking away with it. So again, kind of a long-winded way of saying I kind of lost perspective on what I'm actually making.
Because to me, it's because there's an emotional aspect of it. I think as makers, we get so into the technical side of how the construction is and how it's made, and what kind of construction to make a good cymbal, and how to avoid the problems. And then for a customer, it's like, it's just a gut reaction. It's a feeling. It's a sense. And the more I know about cymbals, the more I don't know. And like, I kind of come to that same place of like, I don't know hardly anything about this instrument, you know. There's just so many factors that go into the making of it and go into perspective of when you're hearing it, you know. Like, so much of it is the room that it's in. You know, you can have a cymbal that is amazing in a room that kind of makes it sound weirdly tonal or gong like, and then you hate it, but then you take it to a different space and all of a sudden you're like, oh, this thing is amazing. And so there's just so many factors that go into that I think it's easy to discount the just kind of the emotional gut reaction of when you hear a cymbal. How does it make you feel? Do you like it? Do you not like it? You know.
But that's why I like to put the process kind of outside of myself, which maybe also can act as a bit of an excuse sometimes for cutting corners, even, which I try not to do. But, you know, I try to be honest with myself. But that's, you know, that's the reason I got into music and drumming, and is gut reaction. You know, I was that age where, hey, this has just taken me. And kind of the more you know about it, the more it, I don't know, not necessarily, but the more it just kind of flattens it all out and just becomes a little more of a technical exercise in a way. So trying to retain that spark and that magic. Like you know, you and I have talked a lot about this kind of thing, but I talk about a cymbal that I made when I started teaching myself to make cymbals. And the studio owner here in Bristol who bought it, he's a good friend of mine, and he tells me that it's on pretty much every record. Every drummer that comes through his studio goes to it and loves it. But for me, looking at it now, being the cymbal maker I am, I just, God, that thing's awful. It's all kind of a bit out of shape and ugly and gnarly and stuff. But it is a genuinely beautiful instrument. But that's because of what I didn't know when I made it. In a way, I just kind of freely went, I think this is how I do it. There's an instrument. But now the more I know, it's like, right, I know how to get shape. I know how to deal with tension, blah, blah, blah. And then at the end, like, have I sort of imparted anything special into that, or have I just followed a blueprint in my head?
Yeah.
So the kind of irony and the opposing forces in the head is like, I want to do this with freedom, but I know how to do it. So
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
It's a funny one.
I'm kind of in that same place right now where I feel like I've really gotten a handle on how I want to tension a cymbal, and how I want like what areas of the cymbal I want to be strong, and it's getting me what I want. But at the same time, I'm also recognizing that some of the cymbals that I've played that have a magic to them actually have inconsistencies in the tension, or have like, you know, I talk a lot about like balance, you know, when you're top and bottom hammering a cymbal to create it, you're balancing tension, you're balancing tightness with looseness. And, you know, if you do it weirdly, you're going to get these weird shaped cymbals that are going to have weird sounds coming from one part. And, you know, I guess in my mind as a maker, it's like, I have this idea that that's not desirable. But then I'll get cymbals in the shop for modification where the guy loves it and wants like a little thing changed, or even I get a cymbal that someone is wanting me to kind of replicate. I'll play it and go, wow, this actually has like major inconsistencies in the tension, or it's majorly out of balance. So this one little part here is just, if it's on the ground, you can press and it's just this really soft spot. But because of that soft spot, the playing section is just got this extra bit of vibe that it wouldn't have had if it was just this perfectly tensioned piece of metal. So it's like, there's a part of like, you learn it, and then you have to learn how to unlearn things, and learn how to like purposefully leave things in a cymbal that maybe aren't technically right, but they actually add character, you know?
Yeah.
The more perfect something gets, the more sterilized and more one-dimensional it gets. So it's like, it's kind of nice sometimes to have like funky things going on.
Completely.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. One thing that's really working for me is imposing rules, you know, and again, something I talk about with my students and things I put out there is the idea of artistic freedom, and, you know, whether it's music or making cymbals or doing spreadsheets or whatever floats your boat. I think it's kind of a red herring in a way. There's nothing wrong with rules and impositions, because then you've just got to bounce around between those boundaries and kind of fill the gaps, but still do it with integrity and something. Yeah. But like you saying about cymbals you get in for modification, I get plenty in, and they're always kind of funky and there's just bits to them. But that's me being hypercritical. It could be that if it, for example, you know, a Turkish brand, might just be some people sat in a room, literally just hammers for hire, who have no idea what they're doing, apart from the fact it has to look this certain way, and there's a kind of blueprint of how to do it. And actually that cymbal falls within, I mean, we're dealing with a piece of metal that makes a noise ultimately here. But kind of along that thought, I realized recently that sitting to my kit here to play, I'm always playing critically at the moment, in the sense that I'm always listening and trying and thinking, and just realized I've completely lost the idea of just sitting down and thrashing, you know. And that's something to retain. I think something to try and get back, you know. Maybe I'm just, you know, I'm approaching my mid-40s now, and perhaps I'm just desperately clinging on to my teenage years or something. But so what, you know, creativity is great, music's great, and playing is great. So
I think that might end up being, I've just had this thought for the first time, so this might come out sounding stupid, but that might be kind of the bridge that goes from like being good at something to being a master, is actually learning how to get back to like a childlikeness in how you approach the art form, like
a flow sort of thing.
Yeah, because like we think of master, and we think of someone who has a perfect handle and understanding on their craft. But to me, oftentimes, like when I don't really throw around the word master all that often, but like if I were to apply it to someone, it's usually someone that can make, or someone or something that can make me feel something. So it's not a technical I'm not giving them that label master because of a technicality or a or technical skill. I'm giving it to them because they caught a vibe or a moment,
right?
And it elicited a response, an emotional response from me. Because I think you could be very technical and know a lot about something, and just it'd be kind of your art be kind of boring, I think.
Oh yeah, completely.
You know,
of course, yeah.
I tend to not really love chops drummers all that much. Guys that just shred.
Yeah.
Because that to me is what's lacking. It feels like a very technical exercise of like, look at all the licks. Here's the licks in sequence, you know. But
yeah, right.
But being able to take chops and then combine it with musicality, combine it with emotion, and I guess interaction with the other musicians, and all of that combination together can create something that it can be fast and crazy, but it can actually feel deeper and feel like there's actually music happening, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it reminds me of, I was thinking about it this morning about this kind of thing. And you know, doom scrolling through Instagram, which I'm trying to do less of, which is why my mood is improving as well.
Yeah, right.
It's like the second, and this, you know, I'm perfectly willing to see this as my problem. It's, you know, I'm not putting it on anyone else. But the second I see a stick twirling, I'm like, I'm gone. I'm not interested. Yeah.
Or the guy that does this stuff where he like swings his arm. Have you seen that dude?
Yeah, exactly. But it makes me think of I've forgotten his name now. The drummer from Deerhoof. Do you know them at all?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I can't believe I've forgotten his name. Sorry, drummer from Deerhoof. If you ever have to listen to this. I've seen you live lots of times. It's brilliant. He's very out there and throwing himself around the place, but it serves the music. It's completely part of the music. You know, it's like the whole Ringo debate, which is really boring because it's just a debate for debate's sake, I think. But anyway, Ringo was exactly what was needed. You know, he was the perfect drummer for that music and part of that music. Anyway,
exactly. Yeah, a lot of times I think we get lost in those kind of debates and the arguments and stuff because we are just too lazy to put in the work ourselves. So we put in the effort to things that are kind of easy, kind of like clickbaity and hot topics, and you know, and to me, oftentimes if I'm ever engaging that kind of stuff, it's usually because I'm avoiding putting in the hard work, you know.
Yeah, but it's very compelling, you know, the whole thing with doom scrolling. It's addictive. That's why I'm putting my phone across the room when I go to sleep and just trying desperately to get off of it, because again, it's my problem, but it's just it all just feels like noise to me. But that kind of brings me to, you know, social media for you and I, and people like us who run our own businesses and are very lucky to do something we actually love doing.
Oh yeah.
We if we don't there's a game to be played, you know, and social media, I can't bear it in a lot of ways, but I see the value completely. It's kind of like free. It feels dirty because it's like they're trying to keep you on their platforms and it's working. It definitely works, but at the same time, there's an audience for people like you and me.
Right.
So, and again, this is something we've discussed a fair bit. We
have, and it's we can make a living. I Instagram is the reason I have a business, I think, or the reason that my business has actually gained traction and steam. Like before Instagram, before the internet, there was really no way for an independent maker to make it, you know, and sell enough to provide for their family. But you know, social media has given us that opportunity, but at the same time, it is designed to make us addicted. It's designed to just take our attention, take our time as much as it possibly can. So the platform will reward our consistency. So if we take a couple days off and we get back on and we start posting again, those posts will not get the same reach as if we had been, you know, consistently every day posting.
Well, you say that. I mean, I think there's some truth in that, but I've not posted for weeks because I just reached a point where I couldn't bring myself to, and you know, various personal things and that required my attention, and I went away. And then I came back and I've kind of made myself a promise to engage, but to divide my day and to have kind of time for it. And the first posts I've done since being inactive for a couple of weeks have had massive reach. And perhaps that's very much like reel you back in. The algorithm's going, right, come on, this is actually a rewarding thing. So
I wouldn't be surprised if the algorithm is able to, like, if the algorithm punishes like minimal breaks, like punishes you for like a day or two, but then if you leave for a couple of weeks and you come back, they'll flood you with influence to try to reel you back in. I wouldn't be surprised if that's how it works. If the algorithm is that finely tuned to at all costs try to get us to engage at all times and be as addicted as possible to the platform.
I'm really fascinated by it. I think, you know, psychologically and sociologically, it's really interesting times that we're going through, but that doesn't stop me sitting back and just scrolling and then going, what am I doing? Why do I feel awful? Why am I depressed? We're
being put in a trance when we just do that, like that scrolling stuff. And I'm on TikTok now, which is,
I was going to ask about that.
The worst.
It's a cesspit, man. It's horrible.
It's horrible. Yeah. I thankfully though, my TikTok the algorithm has kind of deciphered that I guess shop stuff, and like I like blacksmiths and carpenters, and it's giving me kind of cool things to look at of like other people that make things. It's not like we think of TikTok and we think of like stupid dances or like things like that. I don't get any of that on my TikTok, but that's because they know I don't like it, so they're just gonna feeding me what they know or what they think I will like, what they think will keep me on the platform as long as possible.
It's a funny old time. I think the social media thing, it's a big topic, and everyone knows it's mucky, but everyone's involved. And so maybe let's kind of move on from that.
Yeah, let's dump that. Let's dump that topic.
Yeah. Oh man. I wanted to ask you something. And like, if you want to cut this bit out or something, if you don't want to make a point of the fact that I've trained you and that we've worked together in that way, then fine. But
we should totally do that. Go into that.
Yeah, cool. Because we've been working together. You've been signed up to my training thing for probably over a year now, I guess. Is it? I've lost track.
Yeah, it's been over a year for sure.
Yeah. What I've really enjoyed, I have a very kind of ethereal look on things, and I like to kind of, there's a lot of process, there's a lot of technicality, there's a lot of practical knowledge and stuff to go through, but I really like these kind of multi-dimensional chats that you and I have. You know, I don't have it with everyone because everyone learns differently, and that's what I like about teaching, is trying to get these ideas across, especially online. But you've really responded, I think, to these kind of brain exercises of like seeing tension and imagining these kind of 3D structures in front of you and seeing them bend and fold in your mind and stuff. What do you think? You've responded really well to that, I think. I enjoy it. So what do you think?
I think it comes from because I really love improvised music. That's the thing I fell in love with music, was like I never really got excited about like perfectly planned out drum parts. Like there was something about like catching the spirit, or catching like a vibe or a moment and running with it and creating something that you didn't know you had in you, and it becomes this very fluid thing. So I studied that in school and was really that's like always the way I feel like I've learned, is by listening and taking in music or taking in art and then having it be like a response in the moment. And so I think when I started working with cymbals, I started working with drums first, and it was quickly apparent that drums are very much like cut and dry, straightforward. It's like you got to drill the hole in the right place for the lug. You want the shell to be round. So it was a very technical exercise. And then with cymbal making, I started to realize pretty quickly, like, this is a very fluid thing. There's really no rules. There are guidelines for sure, but it's almost like music in that way. And I came to you and signed up to your Patreon because I just wanted to get better at modifying cymbals.
Yeah.
And I kind of remember being like, well, I'm not going to become a cymbal maker. I'm just going to be a cymbal modifier and just be really good at that. And that'll be my thing. And part of that was based out of insecurity of like, there's no way I can make a cymbal from scratch. Like that's just an unattainable thing. And I remember our first session together, it was like, you were just like, oh yeah, it's like, no big deal. Like, I'll tell you where to get blanks. You just reach out and, tell them I sent you and you can do it. And I just remember kind of being like, wait, really? And, so, and then beyond that, as we started to really get into the weeds with it, I kind of sense like a similar, I keep wanting to use the word spirit, but like the similar vibe that we have that we connect on is we don't want to learn by like step A, step B, step C, 1, 2, 3. This is how you do it. This is how you make a cymbal. Yeah. We want to learn like the intricacies, and we want to learn like how deep does this art form go? What is the possibility? Like go run at a direction and then realize its limitations and come back and do away with it. And then, it's like methods are like trying on a different shirt. We can put a method on and use it for a little while and be like, I don't like this shirt, and kind of throw it away and start over, and do something different. And it keeps things fresh. It keeps things exciting. And that's always the way I feel like I've learned, is just by almost reading between the lines, not being so much about like step A, step B, but like reading the space in between.
Yeah. Well, it makes me think one thing we talked about a fair bit that I know you responded well to. And when I'm teaching, that's what I like to teach is kind of how to learn rather than what to do, if you see what I mean. But very often, if I'm honest, I'm kind of piecing it together as I go. It just looks like I know what I'm talking about. But that's the learning process in progress, right. Whatever. But the idea of having method and having process, but actually taking away. So there's that famous thing I think you said about, was it a sculptor who said, someone asked like, how do you sculpt this thing? I'm sure it's a famous thing. I'm just paraphrasing because I don't know it, but it's like, I take away everything that isn't the final piece. Basically. It was
about David.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Was that Michelangelo?
I think so.
Michelangelo's David, his David sculpture. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, just take away everything that isn't David from this big block of stone. But
it's focusing more on the space than it is the actual thing itself. Because the thing itself kind of becomes what it's going to become, especially with cymbals. Like the cymbal, it's a little bit too abstract to say that a cymbal has a mind of its own or a blank has a mind of its own. But that's the way I like to see it. I like to think of it like the cymbal is going to become what it's going to become. Yeah. And it's about how I imprint onto this piece of metal. But there's a disconnection of, I'm not so like, it has to turn out a certain way. And anytime I've been that way, I haven't been happy with the result.
Right. Right. But there's also then that point where we've made it, and there's a whole lot of discussion there of, is it finished? What is it?
Oh yeah.
One extra hammer mark could make it something different. Another round on the lathe makes it something different. When is it ever finished? But then we get to that point, but that's just the beginning, because to sound a bit pretentious about it, I think I see that we're making like half of a relationship for somebody else. So it's like we kind of make these things. It's still not finished. It just goes to someone. If it goes to person A, it's going to be a different cymbal to if it goes to person B,
right?
Because of the way they come to it. But I guess that loops around to this idea of chasing these famous cymbals from the 50s and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Are you chasing the cymbal or are you actually chasing the player? But there's a debate to be had there.
Yeah, that kind of way. I don't really knock the people that do that. I just know it's not for me. Like I couldn't. Yeah. Because it is inherently like trying to force your preconceived notion of what a good cymbal is. You're trying to force it onto a piece of metal. You're saying this is going to be an old K clone, Yeah. I'm kind of like, that doesn't sound fun to me. It doesn't sound creatively inspiring to me. It sounds kind of drab, actually.
Okay.
I've made some cymbals that at the end of them, I was like, wow, that actually sounds a lot like a Spizzacino that I heard, or that sounds a lot like an old K, but I wasn't intending for that to happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing. It kind of keeps it fresh,
Yeah. Well, something again that we touched on not long ago was I saw a post in one of the horrible Facebook forums saying, is this the golden age of cymbal smiths? And I think it's starting to become that more and more people are picking up cymbal making, because I think just because it's more visible, because you got social media and cymbal making happens to look really nice, the flow of hammer marks and lathing, it all looks very beautiful. So it's very Instagrammable and that sort of thing. So more and more people are aware that it's a possibility. I'm teaching like 20, 30 people now. What I'm trying not to do, I'm not trying to say like, here's how you make cymbals, as we discussed before. It's like, look, if you want to do it, fine, but you'll find your way. I'm just going to help you learn your way, But anyway, this idea of a golden age of cymbal smiths, there were various replies to it. As you expect, really. Some people just going yes, some people just going no, some people going, oh, it was back in the early 2000s when you didn't really have kind of access to the knowledge base as such. There was Cymbalholic, that forum that's now kind of lying a bit dormant, defunct even, but there was people like kind of Matt Bettis's and Matt Nolan's, lots of Matts, but
lots of Matts.
Johan and Spears, obviously, and that it was a great time. And these guys are mostly still active. Some sadly not with us anymore, of course. But I'm sort of interested in the idea that there's these secrets in cymbal making. We're talking cymbals, so let's be very focused about cymbal making. There's these secrets, and it's all this kind of dark art. And before you make a cymbal, you light some incense and chant something. And I kind of, in a way, I don't want to tread on toes and just go, it's not that difficult. It's not this kind of sacred pact with the devil or something.
Yeah, but you and I are on the same page with this. Do you find that you want to, you almost like want to tear the curtain aside, like
kind of, I just
despite the whole like attitude and vibe that people have about it?
If I'm honest, there is an element of that, but also I want to be realistic and I want to be generous. I prefer a world where things are shared and there's generosity, and the idea of sitting in the corner going, no, it's secretive. I think especially the world being the way it is now, it's not going to end well, particularly.
No.
Let's just be realistic about the state of the world and the flow of information. And so that's what I tried to do with my teaching, is like, okay, I'm not just going to go, here's a printout of where to hit the metal. Off you go. You're a cymbal maker. Well done. It's like, okay, let's make a craft out of it and enjoy it and find your way through it. But
and if you want to talk about like legacy, like what are you leaving? Do you want it to be about, Dave was such a great maker and that's your legacy? Or do you want it to be like, oh, that was the guy that kind of opened up the book for a lot of people? And then, like I wouldn't be making cymbals in the way that I am now. I probably was still on a path to becoming an independent maker, but I was probably on like a 3 or 4 year plan. Okay. And you fast tracked it. You kind of like, you were like, no, you can do this now. And then all of the stuff that you pulled aside for me, like, I don't think you never told me how to make a cymbal. We never even we've talked about little methods here and there, but as far as like front to back, this is a method to make the cymbal. Like you directed me to the famous Bosphorus video that all cymbal makers have watched, of these guys in the Bosphorus factory making a crash. And I started out by mapping that and then going from there. But like for you as a teacher, you just cleared away a lot of the noise and said, hey, you don't need to worry about that. You don't need to worry about this. Don't worry about that. Here it is. Just go. And then that to me is like the mark of a good teacher, is like they teach you how to teach yourself.
Right.
That's
exactly.
Like the big thing. But then they also they just clear out they clear out the roadblocks.
Yeah.
So that you have a straighter path. Like you don't have to go on all these tangents that take you all over the place before you spend a ton of time in an area and you realize, well, that was pointless. And you come back to where you were supposed to be. It's like, to me, that's what a teacher does. We have this idea that a teacher, is the only reason why anyone's able to do anything. Was like, Well, a lot of it comes down to just the hard work that the person has, and the teacher can help facilitate things and help clear the path, like I said.
But I very much, perhaps I have, I've trained competition, to put it kind of in a basic way. But then I could have, I don't know, there's an element of like, well, if I don't do it, someone else is going to, and maybe I just need to jump ahead and just get on top of this. Well, whether I regret it further down the line, who knows? But
it combats a scarcity mentality, I think, when you go about it that way, because you could very easily say, like, I don't want to train my competition. I want all the business I can get. So like, why would I help anybody? But that, I don't think that mentality gets you very far. I think you're right. Yeah. I think it has limitations that are unapparent, at least at the onset, that come back to bite you. But the idea, the mentality you have of there's enough for all of us. You know what I mean? Like we can all make a way doing this.
Yeah.
And that generosity and kind of stuff, I think that actually it's like playing the long game. Like maybe it's not immediately the expedient route of like, cut down all the competition, so it's just me. But maybe it almost hurts you in the short term, but like long term, what you end up building, I think, is much more sustainable, and it becomes much more solid and firm.
Yeah.
I think it's the way to go. Like I feel like because of the way you've opened up kind of the torn aside the curtain of cymbal making, I feel inspired to do the same thing for other people. So I feel like eventually I'll have some kind of Patreon or some kind of teaching thing. I've thought about doing like a workshop. Yeah. Like come to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, get a hotel, and we're going to, over the course of 4 days, we're going to make cymbals, and I'm going to teach people. And I think that'd be amazing. Like that idea. It's like, who cares if it's training up the competition, like,
yeah. I mean, funnily enough, I did one last night. I'm just toying with that idea of running one-to-one courses. Bristol's a really vibrant, creative city, as are lots of cities, but I got a guy here in Bristol who's really into it. So he came along last night and we just made an 8-inch splash together. Or, well, he made it, to be honest. I just tried in my kind of very often real out there way to say, try and push the metal this way as though there's a magnetic force between point A and blah, blah, blah. And, he went with it and he did really well. But the sort of thing when I started, because I'm completely self-taught, it took me months and months and months and probably years to figure out a lot of this stuff, shaping and tension and whatever all this stuff means. But I sat there with this guy and he did it, he hammered it and then took it to the lathe and, health and safety, we discussed all that. And within like an hour and a half, he went away with this splash cymbal that he'd made. It was really nice. And I was a bit surprised, like, damn it, that would have taken me absolutely ages because I didn't ask for help because I'm really awkward and I'm like, no, I'm going to figure this out for myself. But I enjoyed it immensely and he clearly enjoyed it a lot.
Oh, so,
it's positive and he's not going to set up a business in the next 24 hours and suddenly start coming after me. And if he does, so what? I'm a grown up and I can deal with that.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm again in my sort of long-winded way, just looping around to this idea of just putting into the universe what I feel is what I want to take from it, just positivity and sharing and openness, and if it causes some problems, I'll deal with those problems. I'd rather do that than sit there with an overarching problem of I'm not telling anyone anything because it eats you away. Like the fear, like living in that much fear. That's not a positive emotion, to live in the fear of who's going to come and take my business or who's going to come and, do it better than me. It's like, that doesn't create like a good mental headspace for you to create in. Like you want to be free and open. And my consolation with all of this is that, like, just like in music, just like in any art form, it at the end of the day, it takes a tremendous amount of hard work. Yeah.
And so, you can tell me all the stuff about cymbal making. You could clear away all the past, but even still, it's going to take me obsessing about it and learning it for myself and trying these things that we talk about to, trying them on my own anvil and lathe, and seeing what I've got to feel it. You know, that kind of head knowledge has to be integrated into my body.
Yeah.
And that takes a tremendous amount of sacrifice. So, you know, just like anything in life, I think it's simpler than we think it is. It's also much harder than we think it is.
I think the complications of it aren't where you'd expect. And a lot of the process is kind of upside down and inside out.
Yeah.
And the doors that open up to you are like, I didn't even know that was possible, that way of thinking and that way of manipulating material and creating sound and whatever. Yeah. But like, just sort of looping back on that, the more and more people do this stuff, and like everyone, if they want to try it, should be able to try it and have support, and, you know, it should be accessible, whoever you are, wherever you are, like everything. But because we talked about my training and my teaching now, so let me ask you about, do you think now the more and more people are doing it, it's kind of spreading out and becoming almost that there's the same kind of cymbal, the same kind of instruments being made by more and more people? And so how do you kind of then pop your head above the surface and stand out? There's the option of going gimmicky, you know, which go visual and stuff like that, which I personally don't like. My kind of mantra is that if a thing's made well, it'll look good regardless. So just forget about the visuals, because that'll deal with itself. But and I guess, you know, maybe it's very rich of me to say so, because if I'm teaching 20, 30 people, perhaps I am sending them all down the same kind of paths. And so, surprise, surprise, there's a lot of the same kind of cymbals. So maybe I am kind of muddying the water of my own thing, and perhaps it is stinging me in the ass a little bit. But
I wouldn't say,
what do you think?
I wouldn't say it does. I think that your method is very much about, it's like the classic great teacher method, which is like help the person become themselves.
Yeah. Okay. But let's put that aside then.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And stuff. But just this idea that now there's a lot of the same kind of cymbal with the same kind of language attached. And we talk about language a lot, like this is a trashy crash with a complex strong stick. It's
smooth,
you could just take those words and put them on pretty much any cymbal.
Anything you want to, and
they still mean the same thing in different scenarios.
Anyway. My method my approach with all of this is to actually fight the urge to be gimmicky, because I've had a couple times where I put up a YouTube video, like I did a YouTube video about the Bill Stewart cymbal sound, because I love Bill Stewart, and I was like, you know what, this would be a cool little thing to try and capture. So I did it. I put a video up. It had the title Bill Stewart cymbal sound, and that to date is still the best YouTube video I've ever done reach wise. And I had a ton of people reach out. I sold a lot of cymbals because of that video, and I'm purposely not going to do it again, which is kind of maybe counterintuitive, because it's like, why wouldn't you do the thing that works? But my method is that I want to play the long game, which I kind of feel like the gimmicky, throw a name out there, throw a tribute series, doing that is sort of the expedient short-term way of success. But if you're doing it and everybody else is doing it, like, how is it going to stand out in the future? And maybe just kind of putting your head down and doing what you're going to do, making your cymbals, the cymbals you like, and kind of this slow, almost under the radar building of something. Yeah. Then eventually, before you even realize it, like you've established yourself as a unique maker. That's the kind of the drawback that I think. Like I said, I have no problem with people that want to do tribute series, or they want to call it the such and such cymbal. I think that's the thing they need to think about when they're doing this, is like, okay, are you just capturing capturing people with like a marketing gimmick at the expense of your own reputation and name as a maker? And is that going to come back to bite you? Maybe it won't,
maybe it won't. Maybe it's just a self-propelling thing that just will always be profitable and fulfilling,
Maybe it'll definitely work for some people. They'll do the tribute thing their whole career, and they'll make a name at it, and they'll do really well. And good on them for that. To me, I'm in my observation of art in all different areas, you rarely see, I mean, the greatest example of this is tribute bands and original bands. You know what I mean? Like if we look at like who changes the industry, who makes a really big impact, like you're never going to bring up a tribute band. You know what I mean?
Fair. Yeah.
You're never going to say they changed the game. You know? You know, they're not going to really make their mark. You're not going to know the name of the Fish tribute band lead singer.
Yeah.
You know what
Okay.
I mean?
Yeah. I hear you.
Which is, I mean, and I'm not trying to say that like my goal is to be famous. That's not my thing. But like my thing is just to make cymbals that I think are good, and actually make a mark, make an impact. So like I want my cymbals to have a character that is really unique to me. And if people want the sound that I provide, their minds are going to go to, well, I want a Timothy Roberts cymbal.
Sure.
You know, or like the sound in my head is I want a Collingwood, I want a Nicky Moon, I want a Montiello. Like, you know, I think that that's going to be the way to kind of in the long run create something sustainable.
Yeah.
Just to me, I might be wrong. You know, I might be full of shit, but you know, at least, yeah.
I mean, to kind of tie it to music, you made me think of Radiohead, and there's a lot of debate about Radiohead. Again, I think they're just an easy target for debate, and it just bores the heck out of me. To me, they're a great band. Like Johnny Greenwood's playing and composition and approach and the production, everything is just excellent. It's creative, it's new. But anyway, they they shook things up when they did In Rainbows by doing the release of Pay What You Want on Bandcamp or whatever, or perhaps that's where all that came from. And just completely from nowhere, just went, we're doing it this way. Because they can, admittedly, you know, we got to give some credit to the fact that they were able to. Not everyone who's producing in their bedroom has got millions of fans around the world that they can reach out to. Okay, accepted. But they just changed the game overnight without, and again, perhaps it was really, really thought through, but it just seemed like a natural creative move. Well, we're in this industry, we're in this kind of mode of existing. Let's just do it this way, you know, and see what happens. I think they had something like in the first 24 hours, 1.2 million downloads with an average spend of $4 or $6 or something. Yeah. Obviously, lots of people paid $0, lots of people paid 10, whatever they wanted. But, you know, 4 times $1.2 million or 1.2 million.
Not shabby.
Yeah, with no label attached. So, anyway, that to me felt like a very just natural kind of shake-up. Just like, here, have this, world. Just take this. Here's a way of doing stuff. Run with it or forget it. Whatever. Yeah. I kind of lost my train of thought a little bit.
You have to balance. Obviously, the balance point is like making a living. You know, we're all kind of trying to make we've got to sell enough to put food on our table. Which
that's true. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't know the financials of all the maker. I don't know the behind the scenes financials of everybody, but I do know that this is not like a kind of industry you get into if you really want to rake it in. You know what I mean? Like people complain about how expensive cymbals are. And my response is just like, if you knew what it takes to make this, you might not be saying that. Or if you knew like what my return is on this, like what my profit is on this, you might not be saying it's too much. You might be going, wow, you know, he's probably undercutting himself a little bit, or, you know what I mean?
I think as well, you do in a lot smaller sense, you do get people who are quite aware of that and quite open. I had an email, this is some time ago, but a cymbal I sold and sent to someone, and the subject of the email was like, how dare you, or something. And I was, I'm really sensitive, you know, there's no point denying it. I'm a really sensitive, thin-skinned, anxious kind of person.
Me too.
And I was like, oh no, just like my body started fizzing. It's like, what have I done? I'm an awful person. And anyway, the email started off something like, how could you possibly charge me whatever it was for this cymbal. So, oh no, he's right. I'm a fraud. This is terrible. And then a load of gaps and said, it should be loads more. It's amazing. It's beautiful. It's brilliant. Yep. And that was on one hand, it was a good lesson to me to just calm down and maybe think about my internal workings. But
right. Yeah.
But also I think people, like I hadn't bought a cymbal for years I make the things, and I realized I don't know the price of cymbals, and perhaps I should get on the case and see what's actually out there. Pricing is something I struggle with loads, and we've discussed this,
Yeah.
So I went down to a store here in Bristol in the center, and there's, like a 22-inch stag ride, granted one of the kind of higher level ones, but £550 or something, which to me was, oh wow, okay, that's the playing field. That's where we are. I've been over here worrying about whether I should put a 3 on the front or not.
Right.
But then I realized as well, my thinking there was just more about kind of market value and stuff, which is valid stuff. But then there's also, well, actually, how long have I spent learning to do this? How much was my material? How much is my time worth?
Yeah,
that's something I struggle with a lot.
Same. I do too. Like,
how do you feel that one?
We've talked about how we're going up and down, just trying to, what you have to do when you have a business, you have to find where the market will accept your product. So, it's very silly, and it's very silly to say like, well, I'm worth this, so this is the price, and then just be like, that's what it is. That could work for some people if your marketing is like really on point. Right. But you have to gauge what the customer's willing to spend. All that being said, I'm starting to, I was reminded of like there was some famous painter was in a restaurant, and this woman came up to him and was like, hey, can you draw a little doodle on this napkin? Right. And so he draws a little doodle on the napkin, and then he hands it to her and he says, that'll be, and he says some obscene amount of money, like that'll be this much money. Yeah. And she goes, how dare you charge something that just took you 5 minutes to make? And he was like, basically said like, this is actually taking me my entire life to make in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And like, when I think about, I'm obviously not comparing me or us to, one of the world's greatest artists, but give it time. Yes. But there is the factor of like how much wear and tear we're putting on our bodies, the time element of learning, the time that, I've sat with you for hours and hours and hours going on these weird thought experiments. Yeah. And sometimes I land nowhere. Sometimes I'm like, well, that little rabbit trail I went on didn't really lead me to any kind of discovery. But that is the process. That it's almost like a lifestyle. Like being a maker of something like Cymbals has to become like your life in a way. Yeah. Think about it all the time. You're constantly running thought experiments. And what if I did this? What if I did that? What if I, all the things that we've talked about. So I'm starting to think of it like cymbals. There are the cymbals that people just crank out. There is a way to easily crank out cymbals that sound fine. Yeah. And they'll work for jazz or rock or whatever. And there are people that want to do that. And if you're going to do that, you have to get into a volume game because you're going to have to really sell a lot of units. But for me, I'm going to obsess about the sounds of my cymbals. And I think you're kind of the same way. Like we're going to obsess about like, we want it to be something special, even if it's something that we kind of make quickly and don't overthink it. It's still, the intention is like, we're not trying to make something boring and bland, So with that, I'm starting to think of it. Well, our cymbals are not just a product that comes off of a assembly line. Our cymbals are a piece of art. Maybe that's pretentious to say, but that's the way I'm choosing to think of them. And so as a customer, it's like it's like with tattoos. I've got this tattoo on my forearm, and I went to this artist because I like the artist, and I didn't even really have an idea of what I wanted. I just was like, I want this artist to do something on my body, like use my body as a canvas. I want to have one of his pieces on my arm. Right. And that mentality is kind of different than the consumerist kind of, than that kind of mentality. It's like you go to an artist because you want something that they make, you want something they put their stamp on. Yeah. I find that to be kind of the way I'm headed, is like, I want that to be the way I do it. I don't want to crank out 100 cymbals in a couple months. I want to crank out 1/10 of that, but they're all really special. You know? Do you
then accept the limitations of that and the fact that because I'm my own worst enemy in that respect. Maybe if I just calmed down and stopped overthinking everything, I'd be able to just, maybe there's, what's wrong with cranking out some stuff if it sounds kind of okay. But again, I'm not really sure what my question is, but there are plenty of people out there who do the lines of cymbals and stuff. And great, because they've spent the time, you mentioned Nicky Moon and Mongello, they're doing lines of stuff, but their work is astonishing.
Stunning. It's great.
And various others as well. So to me, that with those guys in particular and several others, they're managing to make it work in the sense that hopefully, I hope the best for them, and I hope it does work. I hope they're getting the kind of volume through, and also the recognition they deserve for the quality of that volume. But going back a little bit to the idea of kind of just bubbling under the surface and doing your thing while gimmicks come and go, it reminded me of, I mean, it's still going on a bit, but I could kind of see it, that it was going to disappear, and it did, in the sense that there's all these kind of not stencil, but like OEM, mainly from Chinese foundries. Not that it's necessarily a Chinese thing, but there's certain big Chinese foundries that just absolutely churn out these kind of cookie cutter cymbals with no branding. And what they sell, I get them coming to me all the time saying, we can give you cymbals for your business. And I'm like, great, I want blanks. And like, they're blanks. And they send a thing and they're all these finished cymbals just without logos. Like, no, that's not what I mean. But
we've all fallen for that trap, right?
But there was a lot of these kind of quick startup companies that went, great, imported loads of this stuff, slapped their logo on it and sold it as their thing. But again, that was the same cymbal existing, because it was coming literally from the same factory, but with like 4 or 5 different different labels on, and those have quickly kind of fallen off the radar, I think, which goes back to what you're saying. It's a short-term thing, and maybe they did very well out of it, and good on them. That's
I think the stuff I'm talking about is very much like a spectrum. There's a spectrum of like, the really cookie cutter is like the Chinese factory cymbal they churn out, and then somewhere there's degrees of like cookie cutter. As you go farther this way, it gets more unique and one of a kind. And, we all kind of fall somewhere in the middle there. And like, guys like Nicky and Mongello are like falling somewhere, to me, like in the center. Like they're hitting yes, I have lines because customers need to go, oh, I want this type of cymbal. I want this series cymbal. That's good for a customer. But every Nicky Moon I've played has a refinedness and a clarity and a beauty to it that is very much Nicky Moon, and very much not a cookie cutter cymbal. And the same with Mongello, and same with the other guys that are all our buddies, in kind of in the independent world. And so it's like, for me, I kind of see myself a little bit farther towards the one of a kind on that spectrum.
Sure.
And like, everybody has to find their own like place. I don't think my opinion is going to be that, it's not a good idea to like be far on this side of the spectrum, because it's maybe it'll work for a little while. Maybe you'll get some business out of it for a little while, but are you going to be around in 20 years, and are people going to be talking about you in 20 years?
Right.
Are you going to have longevity to your work? And I'm not sure about that. So
yeah. So kind of throwing back a bit, although we probably just edited, so it won't feel like a throwback to anyone else. But this sort of doing lines and sounds a little weekendy,
right? Yeah,
lines and cymbals.
Cymbals. Let's be clear, cymbals.
Cymbal lines. And even stuff like other things we talked about, presentation and social media and so on. I think as an independent maker, as someone who I never intended really to build a business, I didn't think of it that way. I just wanted to do it, and so started and figured it out, and somehow yeah, I've worked hard, definitely, but I have a business from it for which I'm extremely grateful. But it's very much me. Like, I bring myself to my business and my daily work, and sometimes that's a good thing and sometimes that's really not a good thing. So in the sense that when it comes to specific things like making lines of cymbals and presenting yourself as a brand and a business and all the stuff you kind of have to think about if you have to earn a living, which we all do. I think, if I'm honest with myself, one of the reasons I don't do lines and stuff is a lack of confidence in that I'm not sure I could. I don't know. If I sat down and tried, I probably could, but I don't know if I could make, say, 10 cymbals and honestly claim that they were all kind of had the same thing going on. And so I kind of avoid it, and so it's very easy for me to go, oh, each one's unique and one of a kind. Because it's kind of a shroud around the fact that actually I don't have much confidence, which perhaps is a really stupid thing to say business wise. I'm sort of confident that I can make something unique. And I realize I'm kind of butting against myself here, like opposing myself, but you bring yourself to your work when you work alone, it's just bound to happen. So finding the kind of strength or just naturally having it to present yourself in a certain way is something I'm really interested in, that like the psychology of it. And maybe something I'd just written down that I said maybe we could come to in a minute. Perhaps this ties in for anyone beginning this or any other creative or financial endeavor or whatever it is. The realization that you're the one doing it, you're going to be there doing it. You can't really just separate yourself and go, I'm going to work in this way. Because if you've got any kind of stuff that alters the way you interact with people or process, whatever, that's going to come in and that's going to show up. Yeah.
You can't divorce yourself from yourself in your art.
Much as you might try. And I've tried loads, but
because we aren't machines, it's like, I think that's another one of the things that I try to incorporate into my music, my playing, and my work is all the sense of, this sounds so pretentious, I know, but a sense of like humanness, and which to me, humanness is like a buzzword, and we kind of go, oh, that's cool, and like he wants it to be human, but like what I mean by that is imperfect, flawed, know. And I think that's a thing to embrace. Because if the more kind of technical we get, there's a sense to almost like create robots out of ourselves, and we become very much like a computer. And then that's where you usually lose like that what we were talking about earlier about that feeling when you first hit a cymbal, and you can lose that if you get too technical, too computer like.
The trouble then, though, sorry to jump in, but I'm interested in that because it's like, how do you then consciously work unconsciously? How do you design in imperfection? Because if it starts becoming by design, then it's kind of perfectly done in whatever scale. Here's a practical thing I've been thinking about recently. So I think a lot during my cymbal making process. I think a lot about the layering aspect of hammering, lathing, blunt lathing, hammering. There's this idea like a cake. You can layer things. You can make a cymbal very easily by shaping it, lathing it, done. Yeah. And you get a very awesome sound, a really great sound from doing that. And I've been in a stage the last month I was making a ton where I just shaped the whole thing, lathed it, finished. Yeah. But I've been interested in this idea of like layering it like a cake, like hammering, lathing. And when I do that, like the after lathing, hammering is like you're kind of, it's almost like you're starting over because you've cleared your surface of the cymbal. Yeah. You've shaved away all of your hammer marks and you've got these nice looking tonal grooves, and you come in with a hammer and it's very much like stark. Like you just see that strike, every strike you see very clearly. Yeah. Right. And I've gotten into this thing of like really over analyzing those strikes that come on top of lathing, and almost trying to be computer-like in how I lay out those strikes. And what I started doing, because I recognized myself doing that and I pulled away from it,
it was almost like I chose to disconnect my mind and just kind of go hammer without the overthinking that I was doing.
Yeah.
I don't know where to tie that in, but basically, like, it's the idea of letting go a little bit. There's a hands-on process where you're really trying to do some specific, but then there's also like a letting go and just letting happen what happens. And it's kind of this, I would do this kind of in and out thing. And I would recognize in my mind that, obviously surface area is something you have to take into account as you're going up and down a cymbal. Like, you've got the bell and you're going up to the bell and then out, and your surface area enlarges like a pie. It's enlarging at the edge. So how you choose to hammer in and out, if you just go in a single line, you've got this very dense area up near the bell and this sparse area at the edge. And so I would be over analyzing that aspect of how I was doing that in and out thing. But then disconnecting it and just kind of letting it be what it was with intention, knowing that I'm thinking about what I'm going to do next. And I'm thinking about what I did before.
But that's all based on what you've learned to that point. So you can you can let go and rest on a kind of ever building kind of subconscious in a way bed of knowledge. So again, that cymbal that I see at my friend's studio, which I wince when I look at it, that I had a little bit, but no kind of bed of knowledge. I was automatically let go because I had no other option, because I was trying to figure it all out. And somehow I made a very beautiful cymbal. Yeah. So trying to let go now, but with all this knowledge, how do you let go and not just automatically rest back on something comfortable? And again, I'm probably overthinking because that's what I do. But
for me, I've a tactic I've used is like what I listen to when I'm hammering.
Okay. Yeah.
I asked Nicky Moon had a little question on his Instagram of like, ask me something. And I just asked him like, what do you listen to when you're hammering? And I knew what his answer was going to be because I've seen him talk about this before, but he was like, I just listen to the sound of my hammer on the anvil.
Yeah.
And then he also said something about like instrumental music and like something that's like not drum heavy with like a beat, because he wants to kind of get into a flow. And that was what I connected with. It was this almost like abstract instrumental music that can kind of flow in your head, has helped me kind of pull back from that thinking so much about how I'm hammering.
Yeah.
It kind of puts me in almost like a trance where it's like I'm just less aware of exactly what I'm doing, but I kind of know the state I'm in as I'm kind of working. So it's weird. It is like a lot like music to me. It's like that the state of mind you get into when you're improvising with people. Like I kind of want to be in that same state of mind as I'm making.
Yeah, I guess that's what we can ask for,
Right.
Yeah. I wanted to, one thing I've written down is about, and maybe we beep it out or cut it or what, maybe it doesn't matter, but the idea, Zildjian do these kind of prototypes and put them out there and then see what flies and then release them. And there's those raw FX crashes or FX raw crashes, which are basically blanks with bells, cymbal blanks with bells. And this is one reason that I try to avoid Facebook and just discussion and stuff in general, is this the vitriol for opinion and vitriol on both sides, or even like vitriolically kind of who cares. I saw someone I know actually put something on one of these forums, quite a technical thing. I won't sort of say who it is because it sort of identifies too much, but what this guy was doing in terms of figuring some stuff out about cymbals was perfectly valid, just an interest presented in that way. Here's what I'm doing. What do you think? And one of the comments was just, who cares? And, this comes into social media and it's like, who cares that you don't care? Like, why do you need to tell the world you don't care? And also clearly, for a start, the guy posting cares. So you've already shown yourself up as an idiot, because
and a jerk.
And everyone else who cares. Bizarre. Anyway, the thing with like these FX raw crashes and anything, I'm not saying they're necessarily gimmicky, but anything gimmicky as well.
Right.
Is like when you and I get a cymbal blank, it makes a noise already. you know?
Yeah.
And I sold a couple of blanks. I smoothed the edge off because for anyone who doesn't know, they come in really ragged and sharp. So I smoothed the edge off. Local drummer here, really amazing drummer, really lovely guy, good friend of mine now. He just went, actually, they sound great. Can I buy those? Yeah, okay, cool. And he plays them and he makes them sing. Great. So we get a blank and we hit it and it makes a noise. It's already an instrument. It's already a cymbal.
Yeah.
So we do some work to it, but why do we do that work? You know, we take it to a point where it might not sound like a fine cymbal, a refined cymbal, but it still makes a noise. You know, it's still an instrument in a sense. So, but to come back to the idea of kind of opinion, I think opinion's so boring. That's my opinion. Everyone's frigging got one and willing to fly it around, but it's like they're primed for the argument before the fact, and it's horrible. But
it's I'm so jealous of the company A&F Drum Company.
Yeah,
I'm so jealous of them kind of capturing this phrase, but they captured the phrase "play what you love."
Okay, yeah.
And I feel like now that is associated with them, I don't know if they might have trademarked it or whatever, but that to me, it so brilliantly states kind of what you're like the antidote to what you're talking about is this idea of just play what you love, play what you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, yes, we could go down the rabbit hole of is any cymbal bad?
Right.
The idea of like a bad cymbal or a cymbal that's poorly made.
Yeah,
you could, because every cymbal makes a sound. Every piece of metal is going to make a sound, and maybe there's a perfect place for that sound.
Exactly.
Even if it's like a weird honky gong-like ugly thing up near the bell and sounds wild, and which is kind of, that's what a blank is. It's this trashy, wild sounding, tons of frequencies, and what I think of is, for me, because that's a good question to pose, is like, well, why? Why would we take these blanks and make them something different if they already sound like something? It wouldn't be easier just to buy blanks and upcharge them 100% and just sell them. We could do that. That's here's a little, tip for anybody, low hanging fruit. Just buy blanks and sell them. You'll probably make some money doing that.
Of course. Yeah.
For me, it's that word refine, and it's about, application. So, can you take a blank and play it in every environment? No, definitely not.
Sure.
So like for me, it should always come back to the music. It should never be like, even the idea of all these buzzwords we put on cymbals, like I want trashy and complex, and I want dry, and I want washy. I want, for me, I always ask people that do commissions with me or ask me questions. I go, well, what kind of music do you play? What kind of sticks? What kind of sticks do you use? How loud do you hit?
Yeah.
These questions are very much application questions. You could think, customers think, I don't want to insult my customer.
Too late.
That caveat. I've already done it. Yeah. I want to put this caveat out there, but like, most people, myself included, we don't know what we're talking about.
Right.
We don't know. So people
one person's trashy is another person's dry, or whatever.
Right. So for me, it's like I kind of want to get past all the BS of like, you want it to sound like Lewis Haynes's cymbal on that one record with, and I'm just kind of like, I want to get past that because yes, we can take the idea of color, like that color that was on that record. Okay. Yeah, that's useful. Right. But at the end of the day, we've got to specify it. Okay, well, how hard do you play? Do you like to really dig in, and do you want your stick definition to stay with you as you dig in, or are you playing super lightly and delicately in a very loud room with lots of brick? Like that to me is what actually matters, because that's going to be application. I've bought cymbals that I spent a lot of money on, and I spent money on them because they had a name on them or there was an association. And I never used them. I couldn't. That's the whole story with my Bill Stewart video, is that like I bought one of his dry complex rides because I wanted to sound like Bill. And the first gig I played, the first note, the saxophonist turned around and was just like, gave me this like ugly, like not like the good stank face, like the very much like, stop playing that cymbal. It's way too loud and aggressive and not right for this environment. And it was just that immediately like deflated, like, oh, I thought I would sound like Bill. And so that's the kind of thing I try to get to. And I have all these thoughts about cymbal making, and I have all these ideas for videos and podcasts and all these things that could help communicate something that's incommunicable in a sense, that it's kind of impossible. But for me, it's like, I want to figure out how to take this huge amount of caveats and information, and how do you just distill it to a very simple thing?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, part of my job when people commission a cymbal or come for modifications or whatever, part of the deal is that I have to interpret what they're saying. So there is, we can only use language. We can't magic up the perfect whatever it is they're looking for and go, it has to sound like that, because there it is already, off you go. So we have to use language. So someone will come and say, I want a trashy washy this and that with a this and that, and I'm like, I guess like you're saying, what do you actually mean? So I guess what you're saying about how do you play, what do you listen to, those are all really wise things, because maybe even without the customer knowing, what you're doing is just kind of casting aside what they've said in a way. Using those as guides and really getting to the finer detail of trashy to them means this, whereas to me it might mean something completely different. But you kind of it's a bit like this. Maybe this is a little tangent, but thinking again about kind of online debate and discussion, and people will go onto these forums, and I'm sure it happens with everything, motorbikes and cigars or whatever. What should I get for this sort of thing? And the answers are very often like, get Sabian, get Zildjian, get Pistic, get Sabian. No, don't get Sabian, get Zildjian. What are you talking about? This kind of brand loyalty, and I understand it, and I'm not getting at anyone, because that's just the way the world works. You and I happen to be dialed into this stuff because we make the things.
Right.
A lot of people don't even realize you can make cymbals. I think.
Last night last night at my gig, I was this guy came in and sat in, and I just made a comment. He was like talking about like, oh, these are cool cymbals. What I was like, yeah, I make them. And he looked at me and he was like, what? And he was like, no. He actually was just like, he thought I was joking actually. And I literally had to pull up a picture of me hammering, or like a video of me hammering. Like, no, I literally make these things. And he was like, it's like, you weren't kidding. Like, that's because it's so out of left field. It's like a weird thing. And there's so few of us actually, relatively. Yeah,
it's still quite a niche thing for sure.
Very niche.
But there was this was a few years ago on the school run, just sitting before the kids went into school, and one of the other dads was a drummer too. And so we chatted, and he went, oh yeah, I had this Sabian 18-inch crash, and it cracked. There was this little crack on the edge, when they crack? Like, yeah, I know when they crack.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, so I just threw it away. I'm like, what? You can fix these things? Like, what? Really? But bizarre, it once you take out the logos off and take the shape away and take away the recognizable aspects of it, it's a piece of metal, and it makes a noise when you hit it. Without the player, there's nothing. There's no cymbal. There's no noise. But the kind of knowledge that you can even fix the things, let alone make them from scratch. But again, looping back round again to the kind of FX raw crash and the raging debate of whether it's just a kind of soulless gimmick or whether actually it's very shrewd business, or whether it's, who knows, because they're a massive company. They're doing very well for themselves, and so I salute them for that. Just getting involved in the debate just keeps them relevant, and present, and you're not going to hurt them by saying you think they're being gimmicky. Business exists and sound exists, and let's just maybe in some senses separate the two.
This is the reason why I think you could probably, like, you have the Cymbal podcast, like you have a podcast called the Cymbal podcast.
I do.
There could be an entire podcast, a daily podcast that talks about cymbals, and you probably would never really get to the end of topics, because it is, like, to me, and maybe this is just the way I think about it. It is an infinite art form. Infinite. You literally could, there's an infinite ways of making a cymbal, and infinite methods, infinite like layering processes, and all the different layering processes. It really is like cooking in a way. Like there's not really like a defined like cookbook that has all the recipes in the world, because there's a ton of ingredients. There's a ton of ways of cooking. There's a ton of, methods, and they
and you can adjust all the amounts and come up with different.
And if you adjust this amount, but don't adjust this amount, and vice versa, you're going to get different flavors at the end. Which is why it's so fascinating. And I understand from a marketing business perspective, a Zildjian has to, at the end of the day, they have to brand it. They have to make it basically the same as they can. They have to try to make things as close as they possibly can to identical, because that's the way to sell in bulk.
Of course, yeah.
But we're in an age where people are more aware of just kind of I think they're starting to become more aware of the niche, the unique, the one of a kind, and they value it because they're so sick of things that just get churned off of off of an assembly line. They're just sick of it because it's boring,
Yeah. I'm not sure it's as far as a kind of railing against it or an uprising or anything like that. But an awareness for sure. You'll see a lot of pro drummers now are actually coming to the independents and even mixing and matching, and that's cool. I've got a few artists on my roster. I can't stand the whole kind of sponsorship, and
we could do a whole thing about that.
It's exactly what I was about to say. But I work with these so far just local artists, local drummers and percussionists who kind of share the same values, but it's very much like, you can have a discount on some cymbals. You talk about me on social media, I'll talk about you. Great. But it's a relationship. If you want to use other cymbals, you go ahead, because I'm not trying to dominate anything or anybody. It's like, you be the artist you want to be. And that's why we work together, because we see things the same way.
Yeah. It's the same as like being in a band. It's like you work with your bandmates and you do it as long as it's mutually beneficial. And it's a relationship, and you're making music together. But the second people go in different directions, or there's beef or whatever, and it's not working for people, you part ways. And like that's, I try to do the same thing, but people's images and mindsets about endorsements are so locked into a certain place, that suffice it to say, people don't understand it's a two-way street. That's probably the easiest way to like boil it down,
I suppose so. I think that's true.
Man, this has been awesome. This is like, this helps me get my creative juices flowing. I feel like I'm going to go make some cymbals today, and I'm excited about what's going to come. I'm going to get my new anvil that's been hardened and see how much I get the bounce going. And buy my new hammer from Nick Downing. Any prospective cymbal makers out there? Downing Arts.
How it goes.
I will.
No, I've one thing I was wondering, because you and I have discussed doing this for a long time, and our working together, like I said earlier on, has been very ethereal at times, very kind of almost fueled by nights on powders sort of thing, but not for the record. But I sort of wonder how interesting it is, if I'm honest, in this the way. But you and I are interested, so I'm sure there's other people who are probably interested in hearing too. If you don't, at least one overthinker, probably
definitely two overthinkers.
Kind of talking about all this stuff, because I'm really interested in the psychology of all this stuff, and the what's kind of driving everything behind the scenes. If we could have just gone, hey, I'm me and you're you, and we both make cymbals, and check out our websites and stuff, I strongly suggest you do that too. But
I own a Dave Collingwood cymbal, and it is one of my favorites. I pulled it out the other day again. I hadn't hit it probably in about a month, just because I've been like working like a dog the last years. But I pulled it back out and put it in a different room, played it with a different stick, just to refresh my mind on it. Still one of my favorites. It's like, I think you labeled it as like the trash ride or something, I think.
Quite possibly. But even then, I think back and I go, oh no, that's one I made in the past. Therefore, there's something I missed or something that's probably can be pulled apart about it. But then who cares?
Well, I actually went to it with a really critical eye because I was like, I really want to like really just be brutally honest about this thing. And I was hitting it and I realized this is a beautiful representation of purposefully leaving in things that you could have corrected, that would have pulled out all of the vibe that it has.
Right.
Because it's at a beautiful weight, like it's a 21 inch, and I think it's like 2150 grams, something around there.
Okay,
it's a medium thin, and it's got this really nice like shimmery stick. And you've got these crazy hammer divots on the underside, so you obviously like really tensed it. And then you came on the underside and just like smacked the bejesus out of it,
right?
To give these big pockets and this disruption in the flow of tension. And so you dig into it and it is like the most explosive crash I've ever heard. But at a soft volume, it's like you're playing this really sweet ride that almost has like a flat ride quality to it.
Okay. Well, for the record, I really appreciate everything you said. And I sadly don't own one of yours. And I'll have to rectify that.
It'll happen eventually.
Yeah, definitely. But what was I going to say about that? It's listening to you kind of describe it, and I'm touched, and I'm really kind of, and for the record, I love your work too, and that's not just you said it, so I'm saying it like genuinely.
Right, thanks.
It's a real pleasure working with you and seeing and hearing what you make. But there's listening to you talk about it, and this idea of I know we're trying to wrap up here and I'm just keeping it going, but
I'm
the
down.
sort of overthinking. What was it? Something you said about it. It's like, to some people it is as simple as buy an 18-inch A custom projection or whatever it is, and there's the cymbal. It is that cymbal.
Right.
But to someone like you and me, it's like, it's got this, it's got that. It's, describing it almost like there's just enough pepper. There's maybe a little too much lemon or something like this. And
I had one of my Reverie drum artists, Jonathan Green, came over when I first had that cymbal and played it, and I watched him. Like you said earlier, that first moment of the first hit.
You watched the eyes, and
I watched the eyes, and this is what made me really realize that this was a special one. Is he hit it and he goes like this? Is like almost a distaste on his face at first, and then he hit it again and he went like this, like it was more like, okay, now I'm intrigued because my second hit is different. And then he started hitting it around the cymbal. Yeah. And then he started playing it, and it was like, it almost like bloomed the recognition of what he thought of the cymbal. Right. Was like this thing that kind of started one place and went here. And then by the end of it, he was like, this might be one of the most versatile cymbals I've ever played.
Wow. Okay. Strong words. But can you imagine if someone comes to your workshop and sits and just dead-eyed goes, cool. And just
it'd be like the worst thing. You're
fine,
like,
but it never happens that way. So anyway, I guess trying somehow to kind of wrap this all up. You're right. There's depths. There's sort of and that's one thing I've got from working with you. I remember very early on, you were like, I didn't realize just how much you can think about this stuff and add bits in, take bits away. You can. I often talk about doing too much in order to take it away. I'll hammer too much so that then I can go to the lathe and just relieve tension or whatever that is. And we talk about what even is tension. You ask cymbal lovers, what is tension? Because they use the word a lot. It's like, don't know. Yeah. Because I'm not sure I know, but
I don't either. Yeah.
But anyway,
I told you on your forum, I was talking about how I don't even really think about tension.
Right.
Which is like a ridiculous thing to say as a cymbal maker, because this idea of like a loose cymbal, a tense cymbal, and in my mind I'm like, that's there, that's up here. I get that, but I don't think about. I just think about like what is that sound at the end that I'm aiming at, and so if that ends up being a loose cymbal, fine. If it ends up being a tight cymbal, great.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's like you buy that A custom projection. You said it's one sound. It is. It's one sound. If it's quiet, it's one sound. If it's loud, it kind of tends to be very shallow. But a handmade cymbal, I'm telling you, not to pump our brands to try to get more sales for us, but a handmade cymbal is something that you can hit it one way, hit it another way, and it's going to give you different things. It's going to give you, it's going to have like a life of its own.
It'll take you some time maybe to get to know.
You'll have to get to know it.
And again,
to live with it. Yeah.
Just for the record, like off the shelf churned out cymbals exist, and that's completely fine. Of course it is. Yeah. That's just that's business, that's music, and they're nice cymbals as well. You know, I think of Peisty and like Danny Carey, the way he plays and stuff, you know, beautiful cymbals. They're so precise and they're consistent, but they're beautiful for it. And that, you know, someone like Danny Carey, his drumming is beautiful in a way for his consistency. He is a bit chopsy, but he's not showy chopsy. It's kind of dark in the way that it's so regimented or something. But anyway, I guess again, as a sort of wrapping up thing, cymbal making, if anyone wants to even consider it, I teach, so reach out to me and spend your money. But there's so much. I get lots of students who come to me, and this is fine because it's how I started, although I'm self-taught, but they come to me and it's almost like the first lesson. Once they've gathered materials and stuff, they're there with a blank and a hammer going, right, where does the first hammer go? What about the second one? It's like, no. Put those down. Let's think about this piece of metal and how we manipulate it. So anyway, long story short, too late.
Yes.
It's massive.
It's massive. It's
if you want it to be.
If you want it to be, the Peisty thing might be your thing. That might be what is better for you than a handmade cymbal. Right, for sure. You know, and oftentimes I think we should have those kinds of cymbals, and we should have, you know, one of a kind pieces. Yeah. We should collect colors, palettes to use. You know, that's the thing that's going to make music interesting, playing interesting. We've talked about the art of making the cymbals, but at the end of the day, we want to play them. And it's about the music we're playing, the beats we're playing, you know, who we're playing with, where we're playing. And for me, for us, that's where we get off, is being able to like create something that is that one half of that relationship that then can be taken and put in its actual environment, which is with other players making music.
Once I've made a cymbal, I have to sort of like it on some level, but the point is knowing that it's there for someone else to get to know. I sort of want nothing to do with it in a way. Once it's made, it's like, get out of my sight. You're not relevant to me anymore, which sounds a bit abusive or something. But like, you know, in the nicest possible way, it's there for someone else. I'm making it for someone else to come along and to hit and go, I'm like you say, to this relationship to bloom. Again, whether that's just pretentious and overthinking, so be it, whatever. But
who cares?
A lot of people like the handmade stuff, and that's good for you and me. You know? And for them. To
bookend it, who cares?
Who cares? That's the title of this whole podcast.
That fun little Facebook comment. Who cares?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
that actually
had a point. Yeah.
That would be a great name for a podcast, actually.
Maybe it exists. Yeah, I'm going to write it down just in case.
I bet it does. If it doesn't, you need to brand that.
Yeah.
Who cares? This has been Who Cares with Dave Collingwood and Timothy Roberts.